And one of the things that's so different about how we do this is not the old idea of I'm just going to take something out of you and you're going to get better. This is opening up routes to take things out, but at the same time, upregulating a number of these processes that are huge in longevity, like AMPK, which is a trigger that's hit when you carb restrict or keto or water fast. We're using that and NRF2, which is this antioxidant detox thing, turning those up. So we're actually creating more cardiometabolic wellness and efficiency at the same time we're taking stuff out. That's why people feel better really fast.
Welcome to the Beautifully Broken podcast. I'm your host, Freddie Kimmel, and on this show we explore the survivor's journey, practitioners making a difference, and the therapeutic treatments and transformational technology that allow the body to heal itself. Witness the inspiration we gain by navigating the human experience with grace, humility, and a healthy dose of mistakes. Because part of being human is being beautifully broken.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Beautifully Broken podcast. Our long-awaited guest, Chris Shade. Welcome to the show. Here we are. Listen, I have wanted to have you on the show for a while, and of course, in the last 2 weeks, I've had a really great experience with one of your products, but the audience doesn't know you. They don't know what you do and who you are. So if we bump into each other in the street, what would you tell me you do?
Oh, I hate telling people what I do. What do? So I'm a PhD chemist. I was originally an environmental chemist, and I developed all this testing for mercury as a toxin. And then I applied the testing into clinical testing. And then I had to solve the problem of how do you get mercury out of people. And so I developed a nutraceutical company next to the testing company to get everything out of the body without using the traditional chelators. And to do that, I had to use this special technology to get supplements in. Their lipid nanoparticles technologies, the one that people know the most are liposomes, but there's also nanoemulsions, self-emulsifying delivery systems. And if you ask what I do now, we're a high-tech supplement company. So we're taking all these supplements that everybody's using out there. They're doing them in capsules. They're doing them pills and powders. They're taking them all with this religious faith that they're going to work for them. And the needle just doesn't move that much. And so we put them into this technology where everything just poof, goes right into you, almost like an injection, peak in your body in 20 minutes. And that flush of all of these different phytocompounds and vitamins and minerals in there to address some problem. Now you go in, you hit the triggers you need to, and you really make things happen in somebody. And that's what you had the experience of is years and years of working on this thing. And then you take this product a couple of days in, you're like, wow, everything's different.
Yeah.
So we apply that to originally we're detoxification, then we got into metabolic, immune, then we started into the longevity world. We start doing hormones, any new thing that comes out as we evolve our understanding of the biochemistry of natural medicine, we then apply that with these delivery systems and our knowledge, our biochemical knowledge of how you put all these different compounds together to hit the switches that we need. So we're technologists and biochemists, and that's where you get Quicksilver Scientific.
Beautiful. So my girlfriend was in your talk yesterday on NAD.
Yeah.
And she goes, who is this guy, Chris Shade? And she didn't know I knew you. And she goes, there's standing room in here. And she goes, and people are like, they're into it. They're making noise. They're like, there's like a cult vibe.
Yeah.
She said, why does Chris draw a cult vibe?
Why does he draw? Well, of course, it's Disney. And you're like, what? My message is good, but I learned how to deliver that message from Disney World. It's just like the weirdest thing. I was an organic, biodynamic farmer, like really hardcore. And I joked that I went out of business as a farmer the year Whole Foods came around. It was a little too early. Then I worked at this farming research place. And at the end, they were like, it was just an internship. And they're like, hey, you want to go down to Epcot Center and do this outreach thing for us? This is something we're doing with the World Bank. We were trying to teach them how to be sustainable because they were such non-sustainable people. And I'm like, me? Disney World. fuck yeah. And so I went down there and they trained me with actors, education coaches, public speaking coaches, science education coaches for 4 weeks. We developed this script, and then I gave the same talk 4 times a day for 6 weeks on the floor of Epcot Center in overalls with a little red barn behind me. It was like a little microcosm of a organic farm in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And you got to see when people are with you and when they're not. And, when you're dynamic enough, you draw people in and they're with you and you can go wherever, the spirit takes it. And if they're not, you got a script and you just like save your energy. So I learned that and then went to graduate school and then started the company and started doing a lot of public speaking. I've just been doing it over time, but you develop this sort of magnetism. And when you have a good message and you're fun and funny and dynamic, and you just lay it out there, and everybody's like,
yeah,
and nobody's on their phones and nothing,
yeah,
and and you can lay down jokes, and you could be off color, and then they just eat it up. And the more you get them engaged like that, the brighter it gets, and the more the words come in to say the message in the way that they need to hear it. So it's like it's a group dynamic between you and the audience. Whatever you say is always dependent on your audience. You'll see that person to person. Somebody asks me a question and they'll get a totally different answer than another person asks me the question. Especially if you get into like spiritual stuff. Some people ask you something and you're just like, yeah, I don't know. No, somebody else asks you and you're like, describing the structure of God and the, infinitude of the universe. It's just like, it depends on your audience. And so you want to light up the audience and hope that they're an interested one. And then the talk goes great.
Yeah. One of the first times that I heard your name, I was listening to Tony Robbins speak.
Yeah.
And he was talking about how his health had really started to deteriorate. Tony's a really big guy. If nobody's met Tony Robbins, he's a massive man.
Yes.
And he was
he's literally a giant.
He's giant. So he's talking about like his shoulder deteriorating and cartilage and things just started to go that didn't quite make sense as far as his lifestyle. And it was the first time I heard him mention that he had done a test called the TRI test.
Yeah.
And at the time I was going through as you know, back in like the early 2000s, it was kind of like renegade medicine. You had to go figure these things out.
Yeah.
There weren't as many resources as we have today. It was just very different. So I had found a guy online, Andrew Cutler, and I was doing the Cutler protocol. So I was waking up, if people don't know this, I was like waking up every 3 hours and doing all these chelating agents in a 24-hour, 48-hour window.
Every 3 hours you do your DMSA. When you add ALA, that's every 4 hours. You wake up during the night. And if you ever miss anything by 10 minutes, that's when everything will go south and you'll feel terrible. And they tell you, even if you do it all right, you'll feel worse for the first year. 52 rounds of chelation before you start feeling better.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. They were my nemesis. They hated me so much.
I mean, that group was so volatile. And then he ended up passing away.
He died at like 63 from a heart attack. I met him once and he's all like red-faced and fat and inflamed. And it's like, we're supposed to learn from you.
There's a lot going on. Tell me about the TRI test. Is that something you helped to develop? Because we were looking at, you can measure mercury in a bloodstream, which some people might say is more immediate exposure. And then we can measure tissue samples. And then we can also measure different areas. So in the urine
measuring
excretion.
Tissue samples. I mean, I'm happy to do a biopsy.
No, I don't want that. I don't want that. Not at all.
No, so the mercury TRI test, we applied. So my PhD was developing really high-end analytical techniques for forms of mercury in the environment. And then I patented that in grad school, and then they encouraged me to start a company, and I wanted to apply it to human health. And in this testing, it's called mercury speciation. You're separating different forms of mercury. So the main ones you're looking at there are methyl mercury and inorganic mercury.
Mm-hmm.
Methyl mercury is coming from fish, and inorganic mercury is what you get from your dental amalgams. And some of the fish-based mercury breaks into it too. But they're very different in how they work in the body, where they go, and how they excrete. And so before that, I call it was always black box. So you probably did like something called a challenge test. So they would give you a bunch of chelators, take your urine and see how much mercury came out.
They'd give me EDTA.
Not for mercury.
DMSA?
DMSA or DMPS are the two that they use for mercury. And they would say, well, there's no mercury in the urine or in the blood until you force it out. And they would call it a challenge test. We're going to challenge out. We're going to go take it out of the cells. Like we go into every cell and taste a representative amount of the mercury in there. And it wasn't true. It was all there because when they started doing these kind of things, we didn't have a sophisticated enough testing to see what's in the blood and the urine. And it looked like there was nothing there unless you give this chelator and a bunch comes out.
Mm-hmm.
But then we got much more sophisticated testing where we could test and we could see what the background is all the time. And what comes out in the challenge is proportional to what was already in the background. And there was a lot of papers, figuring that out. But, with all these health things, people create justifications and they create a mythology around it. And the mythology was that it's never there except for just immediate exposure. And we're going to go get the long-term stuff and bring it out. That really wasn't true. There's a steady state between what's in the blood and what's in the tissues. And like if I go into your blood and I pull a bunch of mercury out, like say your mercury levels, we're just going to make a level here of 5. And we go in and I pull you down to 1. The next day, you're going to be back up to 5 as it redistributes from the tissues into the blood. There's just much more in the tissues. And then what's in the urine, if your kidney's working, are proportionate to what's in the blood for inorganic mercury. The hair is proportionate to what's in the blood for methyl mercury. And if you go in and you do blood, hair, and urine, and you're able to separate the different forms, you can create this nice picture of what forms are in you, what their distribution is, and how well you're excreting them. And we don't need to do the challenge test anymore. But people got really invested in that. In fact, the company that did the most challenge testing hated me. We're friends now, but I was just disrupting. I mean, I was a disruptor.
Sure.
And I came in, I disrupted everything. I said, you don't need to test like that, and you don't need to use it for detox either. And I said, these chelators were developed for industrial use. Like DMPS was developed for battery factory workers who had massive lead, cadmium, and zinc exposures, real acute, and they would get sick and they just had to strip it all out. And these were, tough dudes, working blue collar, and they would just keep cleaning them out that way. Modern times, it's more this chronic long-term exposure coupled to a failure of the detox systems to work correctly. So your glutathione systems, which are responsible for binding to the mercury and moving it around and keeping it out of the cell parts, that's not working well. Your liver function and your liver drainage, which is the bile flow, which is taking stuff, isn't working right. The kidney filtration isn't working right. So poor drainage and poor antioxidant detox systems coupled to long exposures, then you get sick.
Yeah.
And so what I found, because I tried this stuff, I tried the DMSA approach and it just almost ruined myself. I set out to just do mercury speciation on challenge urine. I was buying into the party line. And I was like, I'll tell you how much is inorganic and how much is methyl mercury, how much is fish and how much is amalgam. And I started doing this stuff on myself. I still had all these amalgams and it just got me sicker and sicker and sicker. Then I got all my amalgams taken out and I started taking the DMSA and I'm like measuring the mercury in the urine, but not much is coming out. So what does that mean? Well, I probably aren't taking enough DMSA. And I was just marching myself up to these, like 1,500 milligrams a day. And my energy is just crushing. And I'm just getting so sick. And these people are watching me. They're like, man, you're looking bad. And, I always say in the dark night of my biochemical soul, at the absolute depth, I was watching these different functional medicine talks and they're talking about the GI and the liver. And I'm like, what am I doing? Trying to force this all out through the kidney. I got to pull from the GI and restore that liver GI functioning. And I made this stuff IMD, and a lot of people from the Cutler camp found our stuff and were like, healed themselves very quickly and just left the Cutler camp. All the people still in the Cutler camp would talk about how horrible I am. In fact, there was a guy named Tim Gray. He was running Health Optimization Summit in London, and he reached out to some people from their local Cutler group because he had done all this until he found my stuff, fixed himself, and just stopped doing it. Reached out to them, said, "Hey, come to my conference." And they said, "I won't come to your conference. You have a murderer there." And so he's like, "What are you talking about? Chris Shade is a murderer. Now, who have I killed? Well, we don't know because they're dead." Excuse me? And it's because I wouldn't time lipoic acid every 4 hours. So I had to change like all my business cards. They'd say Christopher Shade, PhD. I had to be PhD-MDR because I'm a murderer. Like, this is like the psychopathy.
Sure. Yeah.
And there's a reason they would time these things with DMSA, because it would go in, it would stir the pot and shift around where the mercury was, and it could bind it and then drop it. So you'd keep this every half-life, you'd hit it. But when you're working with the glutathione system, or repairing the glutathione system, you're not going 0 to 60 to 0 to 60 to 0 to 60. You're floating along, and maybe, you're at 50, and then you dose up and you go up to 60, and then you come back down to 50. And so it was a whole different application of how you do detoxification. Because, when I was really in that depth of it, I realized I got to go this way. And I went back into my lab, and I had stuff I'd done during graduate school called thiol resins. There were really like little pieces of silica gel or little pieces of sand, and put chelator onto it, and you swallow it, and it binds up everything in the gut, never goes into circulation. And taking that all the way from the GI starts restoring the liver GI signaling, and the liver starts dumping more mercury down there. And you just fix everything that was going on in there. And then you start offloading all this mercury. A lot of the metals will go out in the bile to the GI and then be reabsorbed. This is what we talk about toxin binders, whether it's charcoal or zeolite or this IMD was specific to mercury. And so I came on the scene, and, my first mentors were Dietrich Klinghardt, Hal Huggins. These were like the elder statesmen of mercury detox. And they were like immediately like, "Give me that stuff. Let me sell that stuff." And it was like this totally filled a hole in the toolbox. And then I expanded there into making the liposomal glutathione and all the other stuff to lubricate the wheels of the natural detox system. And when I was super sick, I just made that resin. I was better in like 2-3 weeks.
Yeah. It's something that people, especially in the Lyme world, and first of all, you're working with a patient population, which is super sensitive. And there's also, like, from my experience, some limbic system dysregulation.
Oh, yeah.
So we tell stories about what we think supplements are doing after one dose. And that's problematic, right? Because if you're going to base your day-to-day fluctuations on how you're showing up that day, it's going to be a manic story.
Yeah.
Because it's a little bit of a ride, right?
Yeah.
So
the Lyme world and a lot of the toxin world strongly dysregulate and overemphasize the glutamate receptors, which puts you into a fight or flight state all the time. So you are kind of manic and anxious all the freaking time.
Totally been there. I mean, it was the first, I'm good today, but I had like especially when I was doing the Cutler stuff, especially I was doing some of the high dose herbs that were not liposomal. I had like a little mini tremor in my hand that I would kind of hide. I mean, I had some scary symptoms in my early 20s.
Yeah, I mean, that's a terrible time for them.
Terrible time. So it is scary. Yeah. And you have that seeker mentality where you just need to get through to the other side. And everything from, I had everything sold to me from the high dose chelation IVs, which in New York City were like $300 a pop. I had $1,000 in my bank account, but I'm trying to come up with money for this stuff because they're like, you got to do 40 of these. Oh, it's a wild spend.
It is a wild spend.
It's a wild spend. And something like, so you have a system called the Pushcatch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is essentially, that's liver support, that's bile support, and it's some of the binders.
Yeah.
Is that something somebody can experiment with, or do you recommend people go through a practitioner to guidance?
Well, it depends what you're trying to do. If you're doing general environmental detox, Pushcatch is the core of all of our systems. And it's very safe for just about anybody to do that. Now, if you're going to go more into the mercury, lead world, Lyme world, then you're going to go into more advanced ones. We used to have this thing called the Detox Cube, and now it's called Cube 2.0. These are more advanced, and we're moving some stuff that's a little bit, heavy duty. And then I like people to go through a practitioner because, they're already in a very compromised state. The immune system is highly dysregulated. The neurotransmitters are dysregulated. The hormones are dysregulated. They need a little bit more support. But if you just want to come in and clear up some of the crap that's in you, these endocrine disruptors and the glyphosate, the pesticides and the herbicides, and all of us need to do that. You can go in and do Pushcatch, no problem. And you can do half doses, single doses, double doses, triple doses, once a day, 3 times a day. There's all of this running room in there. And then we have one that's more well-rounded called Advanced Pushcatch, and that's for a month. And that'll take just about anybody out there, unless you're already chronically ill and you have to go a little bit slower. It'll take anybody and clear them up. And one of the things that's so different about how we do this is not the old idea of I'm just going to take something out of you and you're going to get better. This is opening up routes to take things out, but at the same time, upregulating a number of these processes that are huge in longevity, like AMPK, which is a trigger that's hit when you carb restrict or keto or water fast. We're using that and NRF2, which is this antioxidant detox thing, turning those up. So we're actually creating more cardiometabolic wellness and efficiency at the same time we're taking stuff out. That's why people feel better really fast. Oh, you're going to be worse for a year, then you'll get better. Like
that's a common story.
What
I think
a horrible thing.
It's but I think again to your point, it's like if I've one big thing this year, when we do get chronically ill, when we're desperate, we'll do anything.
Yeah.
So we will shotgun approach it.
Yeah.
Right. And I think just from this conference and the few speakers I've heard, it's so important to have a guide.
Yeah.
Because we can get on the internet. I hear people all the time. They're like, oh, that didn't work. Well, tell me, what do you mean it didn't work? How long did you do it? What was the dose? What else were you doing? What stage were you at in your life? What was your nervous system like? What was the family dynamic? There's a lot that comes into play. So having a guide for me will save you money in the long run.
Yeah. And straightening you out. And when you were chronically ill, when you got murky, you do not think straight.
Right.
And that shit in your brain controls your thoughts.
Right.
And you argue yourself out of the protocol all the time.
Yes.
Even though you are seeking help all the time, you won't take it. And that's like, especially mercury has this high paranoia with it. And I would get these people all the time. They come to me, they'll be like, looking around, kind of, Now, Dr. Shade, I just want to ask you something. And, I got all these symptoms. I think it's mercury. And you're like, well, do you have exposure? Blah, blah, blah. And you're like, yeah, totally. And I'm like, what do I do about it? I'm like, yeah, you totally have it. And here's what you do, blah, blah, blah. And they just look at you wide-eyed and they run away. They ask you what the solution is, and then they won't take it.
It's hard.
And then if they buy it, they'll find a million reasons not to take it.
Sure.
I took it, and then a friend of mine got mad at me, so it must be that. Yeah, I mean, it's just like out there stuff. And, their health is up and down and up and down and up. Like you said, based on a single day's dosing, you start blaming things.
Yes.
And these people are crashing every other day.
Yeah.
The likelihood that they took your thing and crashed is 50% because it's every other day. And so the guide helps straighten you out.
Yep. Yeah, I would agree. Ladies and gentlemen, new product alert. Silver Biotics is introducing their next generation of muscle relief cream. So whether you're an athlete, a weekend warrior, or you're just trying to make it through the day like myself, the new product Recover is formulated with powerful, clean ingredients like their new technology, their 20 parts per million patented silver solution, arnica, jojoba oil, menthol, magnesium, and hyaluronic acid. This cream has provided me unparalleled relief in the gym. If you know me, you know that I'm always doing leg workouts, quads, hamstrings, calf. It is like the base of the pyramid, and I'm trying to get rid of these baby bird legs, but that leaves me with incredibly sore muscles. So even a small amount massaged into my legs, it's non-greasy, it's very quick to absorb, and you feel it for a few hours. You can use this up to 3 times a day, post-workout soreness, or just for everyday fatigue. The biggest thing I love about Silver Biotics is they give a 30% discount to the Beautifully Broken audience. You are getting this stuff at cost. So to keep moving strong and keep moving, try Silver Biotics Recover I love it. You can use code Beautifully Broken in the cart, and let's rock and roll. So we're at A4M. We're in Las Vegas. We're actually looking out over the desert. It's stunning.
There's the Trump Tower here.
Yeah.
There's the desert.
There's the desert. Yeah, we're kind of at the end of the strip. But I say that to everybody at home because I want to be cautious of time and aware. And I literally think we could do like 20 podcasts on 10 different topics. But the reason that I reached out to your team is because we talk about Lyme disease a lot. I mentioned it on the last podcast. I was like, I've really diminished the supplements I take.
Yeah.
And I'm so much more conservative these days.
Yeah.
It's just like a base protocol. But I had tried, the one thing I've always jumped around in is having kind of wax and waning tendon pain, not joint pain. I scan my joints on a scan. They're great. They're like, these look great. I'm like, well, they fucking hurt. Some days I feel like an 80-year-old man, and other days I'm fine, absolutely fine. Like I can squat ass to ground.
Oh yeah, and it cycles like that.
It cycles and it's seasonal,
like
and
a
it's
creature.
There's
somebody living in there.
There's somebody living in there.
It cycles, kind of like malaria.
Yeah. So, and here's the other thing. One of the first drugs anybody put me on was hydroxychloroquine. When they didn't know what was going on, I want to say it was almost like, that it took the volume down 20 to 30%. Didn't fix anything, but it made joint pain tolerable. Yeah. This is 20 years ago. Anti-malarial medication. But I had tried Crypto Comax after going off of, I was on a cycle of rapamycin, which I actually got decent results, but it's expensive. There's other side effects. I was like, every cycle $600. I was like, I don't know if this is the jam. I said, let me try this Crypto Comax. And so I'm a big crypto guy too. Yeah. So I made the disclaimer, this is not a new coin to buy, although we could make a meme coin of it.
A meme coin.
A meme coin. We could make a coin for crypto. Okay, we won't do that.
Oh, no, I know. Totally. I had cat's claw, and it was going to be called Crypto Cat or something. It was like a Dogecoin type of thing.
Yeah. We could do that. We'll examine that business partnership in the future. But I had literally tried a teaspoon in the morning and at night. And after day 3, I had better results than I had had with the Repamune.
Yeah.
And I had done, almost a year on and off. It was really wild. And I'd say inflammation went down 60 to 40% within the tendon, exactly the spot where I wanted it to go. So the product we're talking about is right here. We'll just show that to the camera, and we'll get a good B-roll shot of this, and my editor will put it in there. It'll look all sexy. But Crypto Comax, what's in here, and why is it possible that I had a good response to these herbs?
Because you still had Lyme co-infections in you, and that got them. And so Crypto is Cryptolepis, and that's the new darling of the Lyme community. It's exceptional on Borrelia. It even has effects on Bartonella and Babesia. But, the 3 Bs in the Lyme community, Borrelia, Bartonella, Babesia, there's some things that are really good independently for them. So the Bartonella, Japanese knotweed is really good for. It's also good for Borrelia, so Borrelia and Bartonella. And then artemisinin. So artemisinin is on the World Health Organization's list of essential medicines for any country. And it was the original anti-malarial. It was developed by Chairman Mao's chemists because in the Korean War, more people were dying from malaria than from bullets. And so they needed a perfect malaria. Wow. It was from Artemisia annua, sweet wormwood, and it was a specific compound. Now, how does that fit into Babesia? Babesia is a cousin, a mosquito of malaria. And so this artemisinin is a great antibabesial. So Crypto Comax, we have liposomal Cryptolepis if you want that just alone, but I prefer the Comax because it's got the artemisinin and the knotweed along with the Cryptolepis. And so it's got a much more broad spectrum, very good on stuff in the brain, and really good all over. And I developed this, somebody asked me to make some liposomal Cryptolepis. And so I made it, and then I'm like, oh, I should put this blend together because I liked artemisinin. And so I put this blend together, and it started changing. I had all this neurological stuff going on that, like your tremor, I was hiding. I had like a dizziness that was going on all the time. Like if I was on a hotel porch and looking down, I would feel it was like this fear of heights. I felt myself being pulled off there. I was starting to lose my depth perception. Like I couldn't run down stairs real fast. I found myself touching a lot of things as I moved around. And all this started going away when I was doing the cryptocomax. And then I did some Lyme testing, and I had Babesia, I had Bartonella, I probably had I had Borrelia, I had Bartonella, I had Ehrlichia, I had Mycoplasma pneumonia, Chlamydia pneumonia, Epstein-Barr, cytomegalovirus. I was just running all that stuff, and I started clearing it all away. And I remember when I finally knew neurologically I was all the way better, I was in Nepal outside of Kathmandu with a bunch of monks, different story. And I was on a suspension bridge, literally 1,000 feet over a river. And I just like put my head right over the side of the bridge and looked down, and I'm like, all good.
Yeah.
And, it's these stuff that creeps up. I mean, I come from the Northeast.
Yeah.
Who knows how long I had it? I view Lyme like a herpes family thing. Like it's in there, it's in its biofilm, and it comes out when it has opportunity. I mean, I don't know if you know the history of Lyme and where it was engineered off of Lyme, Connecticut. There's a place called Plum Island.
Plum Island.
Yeah, well, I used to go to the beach there as a kid.
Yeah, you did.
So you
got the good stuff.
I freaking body surfed on Plum Island. I got the real stuff, And I remember some stuff hitting me in college that now I'm like, oh, that was Lyme.
Yeah.
And so I cleared all this stuff up in me. And then, we started working with a big clinic out in Pennsylvania, Turnpal Wellness, and they Lyme test every single person who comes in the door. And I got I went and talked to these guys, and we're like, soulmates. And I just gave them a whole bunch of this stuff, and they love this stuff. And they have all these stories like you. Like, we got this guy pretty well, but it was just kind of grinding on, and we're always kind of maintaining it. And then we gave him Comax, and 7 days later, he was just done.
Yeah.
He called in 2 days. It was like, that moved the needle more than anything I've ever taken.
Yeah, it was quick.
Yeah. And so it's these liposome, it's these delivery systems, liposomes, nanoemulsions. So the cryptos, the liposome, that means it's got a water core because it's got a lot of water solubles in it. The artemisinins in a nanoemulsion because that's oil soluble, and it has to it's this alcohol soluble thing. So we have to make a special kind of particle for that. And the Japanese knotweed's also in the liposome. So we'll make these various hybrid formulas. And what they do is they get these actives into these little spheres that are dominantly phosphatidylcholine, same thing your cell membranes are made up of. And then you'll hear also, like in the Lyme world, the mold world, your cell membranes need to be rebuilt. Well, we use as our delivery vehicle, same thing your cell membranes are made out of. And so the healing of the membrane is bringing in the phytonutrient at the same time. And so when you make these small enough, they go right through your mouth, right into the capillaries, under your tongue. They'll absorb through your stomach, your upper GI. They'll peak in your blood in 20 to 25 minutes, all in, everything in at once. And you get this effect somewhat like an IV. And when you stack together all these different compounds, all of them come in at the same time. I mean, there's one we have called AMPK charge. It'll put you into ketosis in 30 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Because it has all these things that if you take them in capsules, it would take like 4, 5, 6 hours to peak in the blood, and we get them all in that amount of time. And so these are things like you think, I must have got some great rainforest herb that does this thing. Resveratrol, quercetin, silymarin, diindolylmethane, and of course, berberine. And, what kind of dose of berberine do people usually take? 500 milligrams, 1,000 milligrams. There's 12 in a teaspoon, 12 milligrams of berberine, 40 milligrams of all the rest. But every bit of it gets in, and every bit of it peaks in 20 minutes. And all of them hit this trigger called AMPK. And that's what flips you into ketosis. It's the trigger that's hit when you carb restrict, when you water fast, keto diet.
Yeah.
And so the point of that is that we call it a biosynchronous effect, that all these molecules hit all at the same time in a coordinated fashion. And that's the key to the magic in these things.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
With the Comax, it's those 3 main compound or main herbals. And you'll see a lot in our formulas of whole plant extracts and pure compounds being used. So pure artemisinin with whole plant crypto and whole plant knotweed. You'll see like in the liver sauce, there'll be whole plant extracts of the bitter herbs like dandelion and myrrh and solidago. And then pure compounds like quercetin, luteolin, or lipoic acid. So we like to put these blends of things together and you get pretty magical effects.
Yeah. One thing I couldn't find online, and I reached out to some clinicians because they had it. I know everybody's different, every body weight, every body type, every disease profile. What would you say about dosing something like this? Is it dependent on typically just your response, or is there a serving per pound of body weight?
Well, there's always anything you're dosing has a body weight thing, and people are like, how do I dose kids? And there's an equation for body weight, how to shift that around. But you want to get to as high of a dose as you can manage, because that'll change things faster. I mean, you really go into really accelerated change when you get into higher doses, but there'll be more side effects, or they call Herxheimer reactions. And these are just various side effects. And those side effects go down the more you line up all the right things. So in the crypto, I like to get to 2 teaspoons to even 4 teaspoons a day. And I like to blend it with equal amounts of liposomal EDTA. Now, people might be like, why EDTA? Isn't that a lead chelator? EDTA is a spectacular biofilm breaker. It's an anticoagulant. It's a nitric oxide upregulator, and it's a metal chelator. And for the biofilm breakers, like if you're using like a kinase, like lumbrokinase or nattokinase, these things don't get across the blood-brain barrier, but the EDTA does.
Yeah.
So especially in a neurological thing, I like those two together. So you might start at, a half teaspoon once a day, see how things go, move up. And, these Lyme doctors, it's funny, there's these 2 guys and they're like brothers, but they're like yin and yang with dosing. One's like, all in, just deal with it. The other one's like, well, let's bring you up slowly. But you want to start with a tolerable dose and work your way up to as high as you can really manage. Stay there for a while and then come down. See, Lyme is not a weekend adventure.
No. Well, it can be, but not in my experience.
No, a weekend to get it, not to get rid of it. It's usually, and these guys, their rule of thumb is 6 months, and that's what I did. And you'll clear all the symptoms and stuff pretty easily, in the first 1 to 2 months max. And that's where you're titrating up, you're hitting high, and then you got to come down, and you just got to keep this stuff from reestablishing itself. It's biofilms where it lives in, it hides in there, it comes out when you're weak, and then it goes and hides. And it's going in these different forms. There's a cyst form, a free form, swimming form, and you have to let it keep going through these cycles while you got the pressure on. And, you gotta, because it'll go high and you think you're fine, and then it comes back, and you got to just keep it on the run for 6 months.
Yeah. I mean, I would just also, for people, and people that listen to the podcast know, but if anybody new is here, some of the things that I do is a lifestyle thing because I'm in the biohacking space. I have a Flowpresso at home. So I can do a full body lymphatic drainage once a week.
And what's it called?
The Flowpresso, full body. It's like a spacesuit. You button in with the heat and the pressure.
Oh, wow.
It's amazing.
I never even heard of that. But no, that's fantastic. You need
the
lymph thing. The lymph gets all jammed up
congested.
And the stuff lives in there and it's slowing it all down. I have a like next to my bed, I have my sauna. I have one of those clear light saunas.
Sauna, cold. Flowpresso. I have a PEMF device. I use amp coil once a week, twice a week, especially for deep sleep. Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So I have these complementary technologies, but these are things I have done for a long time, got to a 92%. But this is really like pushed me over the edge in a really quick amount of time. If we pivot from crypto Comax and the Lyme conversation, you said everybody needs to do this. Everybody is burdened with some level of environmental chemicals. This is in the news now increasingly. What would you tell everybody if they're like, I'm interested in Quicksilver, and they go to the website and they're a little overwhelmed? What would you tell like the average person to pick up and try if they wanted to upgrade detox pathways?
Getting advanced Pushcatch, do it for a month.
Advanced Pushcatch and do it for a month.
Yeah, that's liver sauce, kidney care, glutathione, and a phosphatidylcholine program. It's actually called Membrane Mend. And the binder. And it's got a twice a day dosing for a month. It's so easy to modify. Like if you're having a hard time with it, you're not feeling so good, cut the dose in half. It's like, okay. And then go a week like that, then go back.
Yeah.
And, it works well.
Yeah.
I think people who don't have a gallbladder have to go a little bit slower. There's this, the whole Pushcatch. Push means We're going to push from the tissue to the blood from the liver, and the liver push it out with bile.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have bile flow, all the toxin transporters that leave the liver are bile flow transporters. And so that's pushing it all down to the GI, and the catch is the binder. So ultra binders, charcoal, zeolite, IMD, the metal binder, chitosan, mold binder, and a couple things for GI health. And so because of the way, remember I said all these things peak in the blood in like 20, 25 minutes, you'll take all your liposomes, and half hour later, you take the binder. And you'll even feel it. Like you'll be coming up on a half hour, you'll be like, I feel kind of funny. And you put the binder in and you're like, I feel great.
Yeah.
And that ties everything up into a nice little bow, because when you're doing all these capsules and stuff, you're kind of triggering stuff, but it's like bleeding out all day, and it's not focused into dump, catch, you're good. Then a little later, you do it again. And, so usually in the morning, take all your liposomes, half hour later, take your binder, half hour after that, you can eat, or you can keep fasting, or whatever it is. And if you can integrate intermittent fasting with it, being fasted in the morning turns up this AMPK because the food hasn't been there. AMPK helps turn up NRF2, which is your detox thing. So it's more effective if you've got some intermittent fasting on board.
Yeah. One more quick fire question. You gave a talk on NAD.
Yeah.
There's so much information in the space right now. Is it a precursor? Is it doing NAD injections or infusions or IV infusions? I've done all of it.
Yeah.
What do you think is, if you just said add something again to the person really researching NAD, what they should be looking for, and why is that important to incorporate?
It's precursors is the way I like to go. And I use NMN, nicotinamide mononucleotide, and we do it in a liposome with a couple cofactors to go with it. There's one called NAD Platinum, which is more balanced, and NAD Gold, which is more pure NMN. Nicotinamide riboside also works, but we don't do that in a liposome because it's not stable for long enough. So those are the two, NMN and NR. The IVs and injections are a totally different thing. And I think they're completely misunderstood, because you hook yourself up to that IV and it starts dripping. And what happens to you? You want to shit, piss, and puke. Yeah. And in the early clinics, all of those things happened. Yeah. Like right in the chair. Yeah. That also happens, like there was a funny movie, The Interview, they poisoned this guy with ricin, and, it's like, that's what happens. When you're poisoned, that's what happens. And why does your body have that reaction? And people are like, because you're stimulating detox. That bullshit. NAD is not supposed to be in the blood. If you can move NAD power around, and you have transporters that move NR and NMN from a cell into the blood, from the blood into another cell, and you can traffic it around. But those are the two you traffic. You never traffic NAD. It's never in the blood. So I believe it's a reaction where the body thinks that a whole bunch of cells just blew up and released their contents into the blood. And it's like a freak out reaction. And I believe that triggers you to repair your NAD metabolome. So you might trigger more NAD synthesis. I mean, it's possible you can take the NAD apart and start moving it around, but I think it's a hormetic response. Hormetic is what doesn't kill you, makes you stronger. So all toxins, if we give you just a little bit, you sort of respond to them and get stronger. And so this is, an event going on in the body, and I think that there's a repair response to it, and that's why people get clinical results. But if you're it's not like it's going into the cells and building your NAD levels directly.
Yeah. Do you think everybody should be doing some form of NAD support?
The word everybody is kind of a stupid word to use, because not everybody, but most people. And especially if you're in chronic disease, there's some stories around cancer. Cancer uses an exceptional amount of NAD because it's so metabolically active, and some people worry about that. I don't so much.
Yeah, that was on a waiver I did. One time I did an IV. They're like, have you had cancer? I was like, yes. They're like, how long ago? They're like, you're okay.
Yeah. So they worry about feeding an active cancer. And, with all the cancer things, I mean, they worry about glutathione with that. They worry exosomes, stem cells. Like, oh my God, my cancer's. It's like, do you have cancer? It's like, well, what if there's just a dormant little cancer in there? I'm like, then you're living in fear for the rest of your life. It's during acute phase. And that's when you got to shift things.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I do believe in NAD support over a vast swath of the population, especially, if you're trying to get your system back, you're trying to get your energy back, because nothing supports mitochondria more than that.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, listen, let's close it up. I'd love to do it again. Amazing podcast. And I guess the Beautifully Broken podcast, what does it mean to be beautifully broken? Give us your answer.
Well, we're all broken at some level or have been broken at some level. And what really sucks is when you break your spirit.
Yeah.
And if your body can be broken and your spirit's clear, you're going to get through. And that's beautifully broken.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Chris Shade, a pleasure.
Thank you, Freddie.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's show, head over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and please leave us a review. 5 stars if you loved it. And before you leave, there is one big way you can continue the learning and the deepening of this relationship we started in this very episode. You can go to beautifullybroken.world and check out our brand new website store. Listed are all the wellness technologies, the supplements, the educational courses that I love and I personally use. Most of them offer significant discounts just by using the link or the discount code, which is normally Beautifully Broken. And they do support the podcast through affiliations. Now, we have a brand new feature. If you want to see the beautiful faces of our guests and watch me unbox and review products, you can head over to our new YouTube channel, Beautifully Broken World. I do have to tell you, our OnlyFans page is under construction, so stand by for that. This last announcement is from my vast team of internet lawyers. The information on this podcast is for educational purposes only. By listening, you agree not to use the information found here as medical advice to treat any medical condition in yourself or others, and you're always going to consult your physician for any medical issues that you may be having. My closing. The world is shifting. We need you at your very best. So please take the steps to always be upgrading. Remember, while life can be painful, putting the pieces back together is a beautiful process. I love you. I'm your host, Freddie Kimmel. Big love.